Hello, hello, hello. Here we are at episode 2 of Transcendence Talks, and we are joined by the powerful, mighty, very mystical and magical Brian, Oracle of Avalon. How's that for an introduction?
A little bit too much. I'm just a guy. I'm just some guy.
No, we've had such a beautiful history of collaborating together on some awesome events. And yeah, I'm excited to link up again and have this chat all about ancient civilizations. Um, yeah, this is going to be really interesting because I'm going to bring in some of the research that I've kind of come across over the years, and Brian's going to be bringing in some of his channeled information. So, um, to start, we are going to do some grounding because we both want to just get into the zone and set sacred space, and then we will take it away. So. Feel free to join us for our ritual of kind of coming into the present moment. We'll start quickly by taking 5 deep breaths, inhaling through the nose and exhale through the mouth. Inhale, filling the lungs and release. Relaxing, letting go of any tension in your body. Inhale. And release. Feeling the weight of your body on the seat. Relax. Inhale. Holding at the top for 3, 2, and 1. Release. Last one. Inhale. Holding at the top for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Release. Bringing your awareness to the center of your chest. Inhaling chi, prana, life force energy into the center of your chest. Drawing this in from in front and behind. Sense, see, or feel this collecting as a ball of light in the center of your chest. And as you exhale, allow it to expand, grow to the width of your shoulders. Inhale again, drawing in light into the chest. And as you exhale, allowing this ball of light to expand to the top of your head and down to your knees. Last breath, inhale. And on the exhale, allowing this ball of light to grow comfortably above the top of your head and beneath your feet. Sense, see, or feel yourself sitting in a ball of white light, bringing your awareness back to the center of your chest. With your awareness, guide your attention down through your chest, down through your ribs, down through your stomach. Sense, feel this moving down to your hips, down to the tailbone. Allow it to touch, light up, and activate the root chakra. Inhale. And from this point, exhale and visualizing a nice thick root piercing out through your tailbone. See this, feel this, sense this moving down through the seat, down into the floor. Feel the tip of this root now going down through the earth, going deeper and deeper, down through the layers of the earth. down where it's dark and cool, coming now down to the center of the earth. Sense this root touch and connect and anchor in to the core of the planet. Inhale. Stabilize this connection and exhale. Saying hello to Gaia, allowing her to take away any tension, stress. Bringing your awareness up the root, following it now up through the layers of the earth, up through the soil, up through the seat, connecting to the tailbone, guiding this awareness up through the lower back, along the spine, in between the shoulder blades, up the neck, straightening the shoulders, the neck, the head. Allow this to come up now and pop out the top of your head. Coming now to the crown chakra. Sense, see, or feel the crown chakra lighting up. Inhale. And from the crown chakra, sense, see, or feel a beam of bright white light shooting up now, shooting up through the ceiling, up into the clouds. Follow the very tip of this light beam up through the atmosphere, up into space. Feel this going up past the moon, past the planets, higher and higher, higher and higher. Going now to connect to the galactic center. Plugging into the galactic center, plugging into this source light. And as you plug in, feel a nice thick stream of liquid light, white and golden, starting to stream down like a waterfall, coming down through the planets, past the moon, past the stars, coming down into the atmosphere, past the clouds, coming down through the ceiling, coming now to the top of the head, through the crown chakra, coming now to the very top of the head, and allow this liquid white light to seep through the skull, down through the head, down past the eyes, the cheeks, the nose, moving through the cells, the bones, the tissues, penetrating deep, down around the chin, down the neck. Allow this to cleanse, clear, purify, activate your cells, your meridians, your chakras, down past the shoulders. Sense, see, or feel this liquid white light moving down the arms, around the elbows, down the forearms, down into the palms, along each finger. Take a deep breath in and release, allowing this white light to move down the torso, the back, down through the heart, stomach, around the hips, connecting to the root from the base of your spine, allowing this white light to guide any tension, any pressure, any stress, any thoughts, anything that doesn't belong in today's session, down through the root, down into the earth for purification. Sense, see, or feel this white light moving down the thighs now, around the knees, down the shins and calves, down the ankles, coming into each foot, and from the center of each foot, drop down two more roots, one from each foot, coming down into the soil, moving down 1 or 2 meters into the earth before the root sprouts out in all directions, anchoring you securely from left and right, spreading out. Deep breath in and release. Feeling yourself connected from your tailbone to the core of the earth, from your feet stabilizing left and right, from the top of your head, soaring up into connect to the galactic center. Seeing yourself in a beam, a column of white light now. So before we start this session, I'm going to call in our spirit guides and spirit team, calling in our angels, ascended masters, elemental guides, galactic families, higher self, all the beings of light and beings of light only that are here to guide and protect and support today's session. I invite Archangel Uriel to step in from the north, Archangels Michael to join us from the south. I invite Archangel Raphael to join us from the east, and call on Archangel Gabriel to join us from the west. Invite Archangel Metatron to join us from above, and invite Archangel Sandalphon to join us from below to seal the grid. Please create a safe, protected container, removing any energies that do not belong, that do not serve our highest good and the highest good of all. Keep this container clean, clear, so that we can bring through information for all those that are guided to connect to this transmission for their highest good, for our highest good, and the highest good of all. Please help me and Brian be clear channels of information, speak from the heart, speak with integrity, and co-create this transmission. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Take a deep breath in and release. And when you're ready, gently opening your eyes, stepping into this container, occupying it fully with presence, intention, clarity, and excitement to explore the realms of Atlantis, Lemuria, and Golden Avalon. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome, Brian. And thank you so much for joining me. For those that don't know you, would you like to give a introduction about who you are and yeah, what you do before we get into the session?
Sure. Thanks for setting that sacred space. I feel so like soothed, relaxed, like much more in the zone now, more connected. That was great. Thank you. For people who don't know me, my name's Brian. I'm an intuitive channel, and I love the golden ages, the especially Avalon. That's like my home as a star seed. I feel like I'm an Avalon star seed, and that's something that aligns with like fairy tales and fantasy, dragons, knights, wizards, that kind of medieval genre. I've always been drawn to it since I was a kid. I think I wanted to be a knight since I was 3 years old. I just was born like obsessed with it. I just would draw dragons as a kid, and I saw a fairy as a kid, like clear as day. Like it wasn't imagination. Like I had imaginary friends, but I physically saw a fairy in my room, and I still remember it clear as day. So I've always been very connected to Avalon and the magical realms and the movies and the games and the books and Dungeons and Dragons and all of that. But I've also really delved into other starseed stuff. My wife has connected me to my psychic gifts and to my past lives. She's a reader and she teaches people how to use their gifts, which is how I learned how to use my psychic gifts. And it's such a powerful um, experience to have a reading, a past life reading or something like that, where you just feel it resonates so strongly that it changes the way you see the world, the way you see yourself, the way you see incarnations and karma and everything. It's such a life-changing experience for me to have gone through it, like as the person being read, and now to be able to do that for other people, to connect them to other parts of their soul, to have them, it's more than just hearing a story, it's remembering it. Like as you're hearing it, you feel it in your body, you feel it in your heart, you start to cry. Some people do anyways, they remember it. It's like they reclaim their past lives. And it's really just, I love it. I love that work. Um, yeah. And Kevin and I have been friends for a couple of years now. We collaborate quite a bit, and I've done his inner work course, which has been invaluable to help me, control my my inner world, to understand, to grow, like on the spiritual journey. It's not just channeling and stuff, it's also personal growth and expansion and leveling up. And Kevin, you've been extremely helpful. Eternally grateful. And thanks for having me here again. It's always fun to hang out and talk about magic and all the Ascension stuff. So
Yeah. Well, I feel like we've got quite complementary areas of, I guess, passion and interests. So, yeah, you're one of the trusted people I turn to for all things intuitive, magic, psychic. So yeah. I guess for
thanks,
those
Kev.
that don't know me, hi, I'm Kevin from Academy of Transcendence, and this is Transcendence Talks. It's a podcast series where I speak to other light leaders, people that are developing their gifts, developing their light, and bringing it to people in new, innovative ways to create new Earth. Um, and Brian, you're one of the perfect people to be having this conversation because you are a portal master. You are a bridge between realms and this remembrance of other, not just lifetimes, but other dimensions, other expressions of humanity and, of our soul. Um, this is a really important aspect of remembering who we are, expanding back out, and I guess reclaiming multidimensionality when we've been kind of conditioned to only experience and look at and create in the 3D. Okay, so today's session is all about remembering ancient civilizations. And Brian is an expert. He goes by Oracle of Avalon, so Avalon is his specialty. But we have had chats about Atlantis and Lemuria as well, and I feel like they are important stages and phases of humanity's development, which are important to remember and recall now, especially now because we're at a really interesting time of the Ascension timeline. There are many themes that are resurfacing that are echoes of experiences that humanity's been through in the past. And that's some of what we're going to be touching on today. For those that are completely new to Lemuria, Atlantis, and Avalon, I wanted to set the scene and give some context so that what we speak about later on, some of the experiences and discoveries that Brian has to share, which are very magical, very mystical. Some of that has some grounding and framing in the bigger picture, because for a lot of us, we went to school and we got the history book version of the evolution of humanity. And there are many older written artifacts that predate some of those history book versions, even Darwin's theory of evolution. At some point we're going to have to talk about aliens because they are coming into the picture big time. So this is why all of this looking back is interesting because it gives us some lessons that we should take into how we step forward. So I wanted to start the conversation with just like a 5-10 minute introduction of how I stumbled upon Atlantis Lemuria myself independently. And yeah, this may help other people. So I've prepared some slides. This is the first time I've prepared some slides for a Transcendence talk. So you can sit back and enjoy me in keynote speaker mode. Okay. All right. Can you see that? Okay. Can you see that, Brian?
Yep, looks good here.
Okay. So as part of spiritual awakening, many of us go through this phase of like, I just want to learn more. I just want to dive deep into things. I just want to research and discover, what there is, you know, it could be conspiracy theories. It could be learning about energy. It could be learning about esoteric teachings. It could be going into some of the ancient wisdom traditions like yoga or Tao or philosophies from the East. And as part of that, I stumbled upon Helena Blavatsky. So, from my understanding, she was a Russian royal and she left the at a royal place and this went on a pilgrimage all around to different indigenous places. She went to India, she like just sought out esoteric knowledge, and this is because a lot of it had been scattered after the Crusades, after religious, um, I guess, I guess, after institutionalized religion had pushed out a lot of indigenous knowledge and wisdom. Either that was burning books, or there's a lot of things that happened in terms of like being disconnected to some of the older ancient teachings. She basically went around and collected it and documented it into books. Um, I think it's called is it the Secret Doctrine? I forgot exactly what the books were called. But one of the most interesting aspects was this idea of root races, and this is where I first came across the terms Lemuria and Atlantis. So what she had mapped out from her research and explorations was there was 7 root races. There was the polar race, the Hyperborean, Lemurian, Atlantean, Aryan, and currently we're at the later end of the Aryan race. Um, then there's 2 more that are coming, and these are all evolutionary cycles. In each root race, they've got sub races, and this is where it kind of gets interesting. Um, from my understanding, Polarian were very energetic and light, and then slowly it starts to get more dense, so more material. So kind of etheric beings, Hyperboreans starting to become a little bit in between. Lemurians, I think, were one of the first kind of more physical beings, but still had very strong ties to etheric realms. The Atlanteans were very, very much physical. And what's interesting in here is that we can start to see some words that we recognize, like Toltecs, Mongolian. The Mayans were also related into that Atlantean age. And then when we get to the 5th root race, the Aryan, this is where we get very familiar um, terms like the Hindu, the Egyptian, the Arab, Celtic, Teutonic, which is kind of German. Um, and then, yeah, so we're towards the sixth and seventh, um, I guess. It's not necessarily linear because they all represent different qualities of humanity's expression. And we'll go through a little bit of that. I've prepared a few things for that. But basically, the important thing here is that we're moving from the end of one root race to another. And a lot of these coincide with cataclysms. So the fall of Atlantis coming into the Aryan, um, people talk about the flood. So that's kind of how some other esoteric events kind of map to this. Um, yeah. So the fifth race, the Aryan, where we are now, evolved from the remnants of the Atlanteans. And we can talk more about the Atlanteans a little bit later. And right now, this Aryan race is representing the development of human intelligence. So it's very much about the mental development. And some of the other root races had other, I guess, goals to develop. And this is all part of the evolution of consciousness, evolution and, um, I guess, maturation of intelligence and life. So there are all these different maps that I found fascinating when I was in my deep dive esoteric kind of phase. And these were some of them. So in the Lemurian, they're saying some of the um, Negro uh, were part of that. And then it moved into Atlanteans, and then you can see the Toltecs, the Mayans in there, Mongolian, Japanese, and Malay towards the end of the Atlantean race. And then in this map, it has a little bit more. So at towards the end of the fifth root race, the Aryan, you've got the Austral American and the Latin American. And you can see towards the end of each root race, it starts to seed the next start, the beginning, the first of the following root race. So I found this super fascinating. Um, in terms of the Aryan root race, which we're at now, this is kind of how it maps in terms of a bit of a timeline. So the Hindu was the original seed race of the Aryan, and this is why the yogic traditions, the Vedas, the Bhagavad Gita, some of those ancient texts are some of the first recollections of this era, this epoch. Um, and that's why some of those document the cataclysms. They talk about the transition from one age, one root race, and the seeding of another. So Hindu, Arabian, Iranian, Persian, Celtic, Teutonic, Austro-American, and then the seventh. So that's interesting in terms of a timeline that we can kind of relate to a little bit more. And I prepared these because I found them interesting. And for those that want to read more, they can kind of pause it and read it. But I'm going to move through these quickly. This a little bit about the Hindu subrace. They were like Vedic tradition, a lot about devotion, philosophy and knowledge, and they were really connected to spirituality. So that's why they were the seed of this whole root race. The Arabian, now there started to be monotheism, so that starting to think about like one God, devotion and faith, astronomy and trade, like religion starting to spread through trade routes and cultural exchange. The Iranians, so now they started to bring in ethics and morals and dualistic thinking into it. And this is where there was more structured, like government type structures. And this is kind of how government and spirituality and religion started to bleed into each other. The Celtics were interesting because they had more of an oral wisdom, and they started to. So this is like Ireland, Scotland, Wales. Uh, they were through poetry and through song and through like written wisdom, very much druid wisdom. So, Stonehenge, that kind of stuff coming through, which was also related to Atlantean wisdom being preserved. Um, and reverence for nature, so very strong connection to nature, and also strong mystical intuition. Teutonic. So this is like medieval. This is Germanic peoples, quite intellectual and quite scientific, but now there's like expansion of qualities like politics and legal, industrial development, and very much the rational mind. So we can kind of see like traces and evidences of this throughout history. But where are we now? This was crazy. Like, I only found these last night. The next sub race, well, Blavatsky suggests that the future sub race will emerge from a blending of many cultures, of newer societies in the Western world, and the Americas and Australia would play an important role. So funny, like, only what last week I was in Southeast Asia, and for the last 4 months, I've been bouncing around Southeast Asia. But now I'm back in Sydney. And Brian, where are you right now?
The East Coast of the US. So
So, how funny is that we wanted to speak about ancient civilizations? We're talking about root races. I remember what I was researching about sub races and, this Blavatsky stuff. And here we've got literally this sub race of Australia and America, and we're representing on these, points of the globe right now. And there's Sydney Opera House, and I've only been here for like 5 days, so it's just this funny coincidence that things line up like this, that we can bring through these transmissions and actually anchor them in at the different kind of, I guess, grid points, ley line systems, whatever you want to call it, around the globe at this particular time. So this is a lot about cultural integration. So like a lot of like cosmopolitan cities or countries that have mixed, nationalities coming together. Um, and yeah, this is the preparation for future spiritual development. So it's like more global integration, more equality, more multiculturality, cooperation. So more of this mixing. Now, the seventh sub-race in the Aryan root race is speaking about an increased spiritual awareness, more development of intuition, stronger sense of human unity, so unity consciousness, um, a decline of the material emphasis. So like some of the previous sub-races were really focused on government or power, power over structures, institutionalized religion. So even industrialization, now it's more coming back into spirituality and ethics. And then this sub-race is preparing for the next root race. So the fifth root race is very much a turning point, and I think this relates to the Kali Yuga, the ending of the Kali Yuga, which we just had in recent. Some people say it's in recent years. Like this is the time that it's, that shift of moving from. If people are familiar with the Yuga cycles, it's like the seasons that the universe goes through. You've got the golden times, and then you kind of go down into the autumn and the winters, where it's more disconnected from source. And then you've got more separation and more experiences of individuality and less connection to spirit and universal love. And then there's a this ascension process back. So if the fifth root race represents this turning point, Um, and according to like Theosophy, Blavatsky's teachings, she says that we're in the later phase of the fifth root race. This is where we recognize global unity, see the limits of materialism, and experience spiritual awakening, going from just the mind and rational thinking and only material 3D based into reintegrating intuition and spiritual intelligence, going from separation and individuality or individualistic ego-based kind of thinking into more unity and collective-based thinking, going from just analysis in terms of that cognitive process into direct knowing, which is like downloads, psychic senses, claircognizance, like a more full energetic experience of information transmission. And this is all to prepare for this new root races is coming through, which is said to be more intuitive and group centered. So this is the last slide here, but with this kind of narrative and this framework of the root races, it's this understanding that the Atlanteans in their time misused power and technology, and that's one of the reasons they fell, and we can talk a little bit more about that later. The fifth root race risks misusing knowledge, but if we learn from the Atlantean times and those lessons, then we can see the rise of technology and kind of use it uh, in tandem with spiritual technology as well, so that we're guided by the heart and not just by the mind or ego thinking. And yeah, the next evolutionary step requires heart and mind integration. So this is important because it's not about rejecting modern life, because the speed of things, of AI, of technology, of even time itself, but everything feels like it's speeding up. So it's not just about rejecting modern life and going back to live in caves, but it's about bringing the spiritual dimension so that we can have advanced technology as well as the, I guess, advanced, expanded, you know, multidimensional aspects of the human fully expressed, the psychic senses, but also beyond that. Um, yeah, so it's just yeah, it's all really relevant to Ascension, all really relevant to today and what we see playing out on the global stage. But you know, this here we are in 2026, a timestamp for those that watch this. Um, and yeah, it's like this melting pot of technology, of spiritual awakening, of evolutionary consciousness. And yeah, by looking back at ancient civilizations and what esoteric teachings and wisdoms have recorded in the past, we can step forward into where we're going with, yeah, more wisdom and learning from the I wouldn't say mistakes, but just learning from humanity's experiences in the past. So that was my introduction. Um, I would love to hear how some of that landed for you, because I know that you've been on your own, I don't know, research and explorations and investigations. And yeah, I would love to go through step by step, um, stage or civilization by civilization, and let's just like go back and forth about what we know and what we've discovered and yeah, what we find cool and interesting and also relevant to where we are now. I'm going to pass it through you, Brian. How did that land? I'm curious what stood out and what do you want to comment on first?
Well, I want to say that's all new. Most of that information I've never seen or heard from any of Helena Blavatsky's actual like books and teachings and things. I know of her like in the occult realm. She's a really big name, with like Aleister Crowley and the other famous occultists, Manly P. Hall. She's one of the big ones, and so I know more just about her than about this theosophy, her teachings. So a lot of that was new, and I'm trying not to judge it or to say that's not what I learned. I'm trying to be open and just absorb it, observe it, see how it resonates in things, and also when I take in new information like that, I almost have to like observe it and try to push away all my judgments. And then if I want to get clarity on it, I would have to connect with my channel and say I love learning new things and pondering it, considering it. What if does this feel right? And and we know history's been tampered with. Like the history books have been changed. The real history's been hidden. It's below the Vatican. It's been locked away for centuries, and we've been controlled or led on a certain path, and we're still being led. So using discernment is really important. And how do people do it? Because they've been raised since a kid to learn one timeline that isn't necessarily true. So it's like getting all these puzzle pieces, and this is like a piece of a puzzle. Like, where does this one go? Where does this information go? Does it even fit in this puzzle at all? Um, so it's fun. But when I was getting a little bit of a download about the future, the coming race, while you were talking about everything and those blank spots there and how it's all happening, and you're talking about all the races mixing together, and there's more than just humans. I'm feeling like when you were getting that, I was like, I don't know if you are aware of the Essassani.
Yep.
It's basically the future timeline of humanity and the gray aliens when they are integrated, when they have superior intellect of the grays, but they're also reintegrated with the human emotion, but it's in a mature, more balanced sense. I do think that's going to be part of a thing. It's going to be very quiet in the beginning. I think there's probably already hybrids happening,
Yep.
human and gray alien. And actually, one of the last readings I did the other day was Avalon past life reading, but they were connected to the grays in a very strange roundabout way, where this person was a gray alien soul, and they had technology to put like a tracking chip in their soul, and they volunteered to go on these incarnational adventures for their science to expand their knowledge of different things. And they actually, like, as a gray alien, they signed up for it. And the technology itself, they could access the soul of this being. And the being died. So I like saw the gray alien sitting in a chair and it willingly died for science and it incarnated into Avalon. And they're here now on a similar mission on Earth. Like that's their Earth mission is to experience life from the point of view from a human, what it's like to feel all the emotions, to learn things. And they're kind of like a two-way ambassador for the Greys here on Earth. But in their lifetime in Avalon, they were a wizard. And it was a one-way thing just to like learn the magic of Avalon so that the gray aliens could like study magic and use it for their stuff. But that's the future that I'm seeing. Like, well, I was learning about all that and all the things melting together. The gray aliens are going to be helping to guide. That was the one thing I saw. Like the Essassani are going to be one of the future, maybe the seventh one, not the very next one, but it's going to be a long time of integration and perfecting it. And then it's like spiritual mastery of oneness. They're a hive mind
Mm.
community, telepathy, but also high technology. So how do you feel about that? So like,
It, okay. I love that. I feel like we got galactic really quickly. I thought we were
well,
going to
that's
go
what's coming
ancient.
through. Like,
I think that's fine.
yep.
Yeah, because I think we can also bring in let's just freestyle this, wherever it's going to go is where it goes. But the rainbow children, like there's a different frequency
Mhm.
of children that are coming in that are incarnating. And I do understand that with the like cosmic disclosure, galactic disclosure, they're going to be bringing in, yeah, slowly assimilating the hybrid children. And that hybrid project is like I think that's a whole other podcast episode, like just talking about galactics. So I find that fascinating. Can we loop back to, let's touch on the future at the very end of the conversation, but can we like just rewind and go back to Maybe Lemuria is a good place to start because I know that information from Lemuria has come through for you. You've shared information about Lemuria to me, and you have such a very unique perspective because you go into these realms through people's past lifetimes and you start to experience and gather data and information based on what their lifetimes were like. So you're like a living library, having researched and done these past life readings for people. So you've built up a really interesting like reservoir of perspectives that, you know, I don't know how many people can bring through what you've collected so far. So let's start with like you can start with either the Brian human version, what do you know about Lemuria first, or you can go straight into what you've learnt about Lemuria through the channeled past life readings that you've done. Up to you.
Lemuria is something I'm very connected to because I have a like a parallel or a past lifetime in Lemuria that I'm really strongly connected to. And I've channeled about it myself. And my wife Jenny's a very powerful channel. She's probably most powerful channel I've ever met. I channeled some information about it and I was like, I'm not going to tell you about this lifetime. I want you to channel about it too, see what comes through. And then I wanted to compare what we both channeled to see what lined up to kind of test my channeling because I know sure channeling is good. It's like it's perfect, but that was a way for me to like test myself, but also a way to confirm. Like if two people are channeling same details on the same thing without knowing about it, um, then that's confirmation. That's a proof, because what are the chances that two people randomly channel details about a lifetime and they match up? It's pretty slim scientifically, because I like to be logical along with channeling dragons and wizards, so I balance the two. But it started, I was connected to a wizard lifetime in Avalon. I was really connecting to it. And I was getting a reading with my wife, and she said, I'm gonna have to look to Lemuria because there was a lifetime in Lemuria. There's magic there that's gonna bridge the missing pieces of the Avalon magic. Like there was pieces in Avalon. Avalon happened after Lemuria and after Atlantis, but there was parts of the original magic from Lemuria that got lost to time. So like I was connecting to this Avalonian version of myself, and there was pieces missing that were forgotten, and I had to go back further to Lemuria. So when I channeled about Lemuria, I channeled that I was a wizard of sorts, a leader, like it would be a king, but I don't think there was a monarchy. Um, and I started to get details about this lifetime. And I channeled, he had this long beard. He was pretty well fit. He lived in like by the sea, by the ocean. It was a beautiful, like paradise world, much higher vibe than now. It's like everything was beautiful, everything was full of life. And I channeled a lot about the religion, I will call it, or the spiritual beliefs of Lemuria. And they believed in that they were incarnated into a dream and that there was a dreamer, a great like god being who was dreaming everything into existence. And the Lemurian people saw themselves as the dream guardians. So they like went into the dream as an aspect of the dreamer to remember, and they could use their awareness that they were in a dream to shape reality, to help calm storms and things. Like when it was storming out, like the dreamer was having a bad dream, and they would do all these like dream magic was their power. But they were so connected to nature, they could help trees to grow, very connected to creatures, they could communicate telepathically, and whales in particular. This group that I was part of that lived by the sea, we would call to the whales, we would sing songs of creation with the whales and the dolphins and like work with the elements, and we could control the weather, we could do all this stuff, but it wasn't just the humans, which actually weren't humans. It was like the previous race before humanity. The current humanity was different than Atlanteans and Lemurians. Avalon was like young humanity, the current version. But Yeah, that's a whole nother thing where humanity itself has been wiped out and started over from scratch, re-genetically made. And the older versions of humanity, it's in the Bible, lived longer and they had access to magical powers. Like they had different strands of DNA that could physically create magic, like the Force in Star Wars. You know, they could use the Force for dream magic, or in Avalon, it was elemental magic. Um, but current humanity, that those genes were turned off, and it still lives in our soul. And I think there's maybe latent like genes within us that we can be activated through spirituality, but they're not naturally active like the older humanity, the older races. Um, so yeah. And then I had my wife channel details about that same lifetime, and she channeled the name. She's a lot better doing names than I am, but my name was Lanvir, and I was a leader of light, a male, it was a matriarchy in Lemuria, not a patriarchy like now, but I was a male ruler. And the way that the the thing they did, they had these crowns of light. They were almost like crystal crowns, but they were like energetic, almost like a halo. They would just float above your head.
Hmm.
And the way that you became leader is like when the previous leader died, like the crown would appear over the next leader's head. It
Hmm.
would like magically, like you were almost chosen. I don't know how it was chosen, the dreamer, or if the people all used their heart magic or whatever, but it would appear over your head. And then you'd actually live longer than all the other beings, which is a burden in my case because I became a leader and I outlived my wife in that lifetime, who I believe is my current wife, and my child in that lifetime. Like I had to keep ruling and leading the people, but it was a heavy, like heavy crown, even though it was literally a crown of light. There was still the grief energy. But she channeled all these things, and then she also saw the whales, that I would swim with the whales and ride on the whales and sing with the whales and do magic in that sense. But there were a lot of details that lined up. We both saw that I was on the beach, that I was a ruler of like a king. She channeled the name, which I didn't get. But it was a beautiful lifetime. Like people would go out to their crops and put their hand in the dirt and help them to like grow. Like they were just so connected to nature. Um, and there was other things. I had these pools of water, like on the beach and the rocks. There were sacred pools where whenever there was a decision to be made, I would scry. It was like a form of scrying into the sacred pools to see the best outcome. And I had like a magic conch shell, and I could talk into it, and everyone in the realm would hear my decisions and things. And I would create a rainbow, like when I made my things with the staff. And so it was like this powerful Lemurian magic lifetime. And that was the original magic, was dream magic, like being part of the dream, understanding it. It's like waking up, lucid dreaming reality. And then that turned into Avalon, which had more polarity, light and dark, and Atlantis before that, which had polarity as well with technology. And you could use it for good and to make life easier and more convenience and life of leisure, or you could use it for evil, spying and oppression and all the other
Yeah,
stuff.
let's stick on Lemuria for a second before we go into Atlantis. Just because I'm in Australia, like just as you're speaking about the dream and dream magic, so the indigenous Australians are called the Aborigines, and their, I guess, spirituality is based around the dream time. And they have some stories that are about the rainbow serpent. And I imagine they're like nagas. So like these
Really?
giant,
Rainbows.
giant like snakes that are astral that kind of like, well, the stories are that they go through the land and they've created the mountains and the rivers and stuff like that. But they're some of the oldest like civilizations. Like I can't remember the number, but like really like ancient. So I wonder if like yeah, the Aborigines, because of their Dreamtime spirituality, are part of this Lemurian kind of ancestry. What did you want to say about the snakes?
Oh, the rainbow serpent. seen one as a spirit guide of mine, and it was so vivid. I actually made like an image on like an AI image of it, like diving through the water, coming out like it was a huge serpent dragon, a rainbow serpent who was like a collection. The rainbow of all the lifetimes all blended together made this like rainbow serpent. And it's a version of my soul, I guess. And I've seen it so vividly. And you're talking about the dream magic and everything and the rainbow serpents. It's like, oh, I'm part of that. That's part of my soul group, my soul oversoul, I'd say. It's really cool.
Okay. So, is there anything else about Lumeria that you wanted to bring through? Any other details that you think would be that our audience would find interesting from some of the other readings that you've maybe come across?
It was the feel of Lemuria. Like when I think of the golden ages that we know about, it's like Avalon, Atlantis, Lemuria. Lemuria is the highest vibrational like feeling. Like there's not as much polarity, darkness, or things. It's like an age of light where light prevailed. Um, it was connection, closeness. Like everyone was friends with everyone in the village. There was no village idiot. Everyone was loved and appreciated. There was no crime, I'd say. Like people were just in tune with the land. It was oneness, the oneness frequency. And then it kind of fell. Like every golden age came back up, but it wasn't as high as Lemuria. Um, so maybe there's cycles within cycles, like it spirals down, and then like eventually we might get back up there. But it seems like they fall into an age of darkness and then it rises to another age, but they never reach that peak again so
Mm.
far.
My sense is that so as consciousness descends into density and matter, it starts off etheric, so very connected to spirit. And then as it's less physical and less mature or evolved physically, it's a little bit more primal or tribal because even as you're speaking about it, it's very nature connected. It's almost very village, like you're saying things like village. I'm picking up on the fact that it feels more indigenous than it does technological, even though it's spiritually advanced and it's evolved and it's like closer to unity. Like like I think a useful lens to look through all of this is the role of technology because we've already dropped genetics and galactics and aliens, and there is like an advanced technological component to that expression of life. With Lumeria, the technology was I imagine more about light, intuition, connection to nature, crystals, and elementals. So when I've spoken to you about Lemurian, I think you told me about a Lemurian lifetime that I was this like white dragon that would make it rain or something like that. And um, I feel like Lemuria, I want to bring in elementals because it's something that it's one of your specialties, but it's something that in our day and age we're more disconnected from. So when we talk about indigenous, when we talk about connection to nature, even when we talk about mythology, um, Lemuria almost lives in an age where dragons were mythical creatures, where, probably even the spirits of fire, water, the air, they were more tangible and more like people were able to interface with them in a more kind of, yeah, tangible way. What do you have to say about that? Because I know that this is something that you have an opinion on. Um, Tell me about the connection between elementals and Lemuria.
Like you said, the crystals are very important in Lemuria, and a lot of like the Lemurian seed crystals carry information from that time, from the elemental beings of that age, like the dragons. I've seen people have past lives as crystal dragons, as cloud dragons, in that time period. Like, and elementals are primarily tied to elements. That's why they're elementals. and they all have jobs to do. Like the fairies would have their own jobs of taking care of nature and things. Dragons I've seen be related to the weather, to the earth, to like the dragon ley lines and things under the earth. Crystal dragons that help imprint the crystals or energetically charge them. I've also seen fairy beings with that job that help grow the crystals. Um, but guardians are protectors a lot of the time, and they protected the crystals and sacred knowledge, and they help to imprint, especially crystals of the Lemurian age. Um, but I see them as still spiritual beings. The elementals exist in a higher frequency, but the people of that age, they weren't quite humans. They were Lemurians. They were a different race. They could see a wider band of frequency. They existed in the higher realm, so they were like overlapping with these other higher dimensions. They were physical, but they were also able to touch the dream and shape it, and like they were part of that other realm of consciousness and frequency and vibration. So it's like it's hard to describe, but I'd say the elemental beings, a lot of them are like eighth dimensional, seventh dimensional, sixth dimensional. The Lemurians were also existing in those dimensions where there's less darkness, less things like that, so less polarity. But they would interact with these elemental beings. They could talk to them. They could work with them when they were doing their dream magic. They could summon them. They're connected to them. They see them as uh, what's the word? Friends, soul, family. Like they know they're connected. That connection, they feel it. Like would they'd swim in the ocean with these huge beasts and they'd summon them without fear because they were family, they were soul family. Like being in the water next to a whale would be terrifying for a human now. Like I wouldn't want to do it. But in that lifetime, they were family, they were friends. You reunited, you'd sing songs to each other. Same with the elementals. You'd call on them and they'd exist in a lighter frequency. I don't see them. Actually, that's not true. There were actual like sea monsters and things that were physical. There's dragons that exist in every dimension. They all the way down to the underworld. There are like lower dimensional dragons, but they had access to communicate with the higher dimensional beings. And they would actually see them as more physical, but modern humanity wouldn't be able to see them at all just because we don't exist in that dimension.
Hmm.
Does that answer your questions about the elementals?
It
Kind
does.
of.
I just feel like because you're so connected to the elementals, there's probably, I think I'm thinking about people that are brand new to elementals. So if I was gonna, because it took me a while to understand what they were. So elementals, say like earth elementals, you've got tree spirits and you've got, what's the one that starts with D?
Dryad?
Dryads. Um, yeah, so could you just give a quick example of each of the elements and some of the beings that exist within each of those elements, just for people that don't know?
Okay. Yeah, okay. Well, like I said, they're all tied to specific elements that they worked with. And I'll just give some examples of ones that I've seen in people's past lives. And when you said Earth Elemental, I've seen several sleeping titans where people were like these huge stone beings that were like giant, monstrous protectors of the Earth. At one
Hmm.
point, the Earth was struck by the moon or something, and it was totally wiped out and rebuilt from that. And there were Titan beings, these elementals that helped to reconstruct the Earth and hold it together. And that's where like myths like Atlas and things like that, where he holds the Earth on his shoulders. There were these and it's hard to know when I'm channeling. Like I see the being, the person's living the lifetime, what dimension it's in. If it was a physical being, probably not. It was probably the spirit of
Yeah.
these, but it manifested or showed itself in the vision as this giant stone golem looking thing, a titan, and then it like held the earth together to heal it and it fell asleep. And then while this titan is sleeping, it's dreaming of other incarnations. Like the human lifetime that this person was having now was a dream of the
Um,
titan. that it like the Titan was the dreamer dreaming of being a human, and it was a really cool perspective. Um, Air elementals, things like fairies that control the wind. I've seen fairies that change the color of the leaves, like in the fall time. Like there's certain elementals whose job is to do that. Like they almost like it's their art is to help bring out different vibrant colors in the trees in the autumn. So they all have their own specific jobs. I've seen snowflake fairies where they each make their own individual snowflakes, and the elemental beings help to shape it into reality with like energetic frequency. So when snow's falling, like the elemental beings help to create it. Um, Jenny channeled a lifetime for somebody that was a sun runner, which was a being that helped carry the sunlight down to Earth. So somebody in one of her memberships had a past life as an elemental being, and they were called sun runners. So they would literally just carry the sunlight, like bring it, and that was their purpose.
Wow.
So it's like a fire elemental. And I've also seen fire elementals as like a an underground, under realm like imp, I guess, like a fire fairy, like with bat wings and things, and it existed, but it wasn't evil in nature. It just existed in the underworld, and it was actually a bringer of light because it would like fly around and radiate and like use magma light and fire energy to help illuminate the underworld. And it wasn't evil in nature. It was just a fire spirit that existed there. Um, but it was really
That's
fascinating.
I've heard salamanders are fire related, and then like lizard type fire. Is-
That's, you know where that originated from?
Where?
I researched it because I made my own like coat of arms for medieval fighting, and the salamander is always pictured in being engulfed in flames. Uh, it's actually a medieval thing where
Um,
people thought salamanders had the power of fire because they would throw logs in the fireplace and they would come out because of the heat. So they're always seen in a fireplace, and people thought they were fire
oh,
spirits, but it's really just the fire burning the log, and they would come out. So poor salamanders, they're like mystical by accident by being
right.
burned,
I
you know?
see.
So,
That's so funny.
but they're probably, I haven't channeled a salamander spirit, but that's where the myth came from, supposedly.
Okay.
Um, there are fire dragons, I know that.
What are we missing?
And people use for healing, like to burn away things that no longer serve you, things in your energy field. Like working with dragons is very powerful for energy work.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, the air
Water.
elementals, water elementals, we haven't touched on.
Hmm.
Uh, Water spirits. I've seen all kinds of different. There was one elemental lifetime that came through for somebody that was the spirit of the air where the ocean met the shore. So it was like the breeze just on like where the land meets the sea, and it manifested as like this feminine spirit that was like a the sea breeze, and it would
Wow.
like this such a soothing energy, and it was a spirit guide that came forward for somebody, but that was the elemental nature of it was where the sea meets the sand, and it was like the breeze. So it was the air, the water, and the land, the three elements coming together to create the energy of that elemental being.
I've heard of this thing called Salacia.
And then there's
Salacia. Hello?
I've never heard of it.
I've heard it through
What is it?
astrological circles, but it's the shimmering of light on the ocean. And like everything you're describing feels like these really beautiful like moments of interaction of nature. And that's why it's like not it doesn't necessarily need to be like a creature or an entity. It's like it can be a quality, right? It can be like this moment or this phenomenon. Um, okay, have we covered it? And then maybe ether unicorns, right? Would you call them like etheric or they exist in many dimensions, don't they? Like there can be solar unicorns, there can be like it gets pretty
They do.
broad.
Yeah, they each have their own kind of frequency that there's healer unicorns, there's protector unicorns. I've seen some that are very protective. Um, There's what else? Just people have had lifetimes as unicorns. Some have wings, some don't. And I think a lot of times that depends on what dimension they're incarnated in. And Diana Cooper, she's a powerful channeler, has her oracle decks and books. She said that unicorns, their wings actually radiate from their heart. It's like a heart energy that they fly around with.
Ah.
Um, but yeah, I love unicorns. I love all the elemental beings, the light ones and the dark ones. But unicorns are where I've channeled. My first lifetime in Avalon was a unicorn, like a Pegasus unicorn. And a lot of times people think they're like wise and things, and they can be, but they're so high in vibration. It's an angelic type frequency. They're very close to source. A lot of them are new souls. They're so pure, and unicorns represent purity because it's untainted by, the darkness of lifetimes and trauma and things. A lot of them are new souls, and they just shine so brightly with that fresh source energy, like it hasn't been hardened through all the trauma yet. So
And that's why they're related to childlike wonder and curiosity, right? I think they've got like a childlike, playful spirit to them. The other thing about unicorns that I learned was
yeah.
that their unicorn is actually the third eye that's been like calcified, oh, not calcified, crystallized. Um, yeah, crystalline structure. So, okay, cool. So what I want to talk about now as we transition from Lemuria into Atlantis recently, like just before like this talk, this is kind of how the universe sends me things. I saw a video which talked about at the end of Lemuria, there were some communities or groups that got the notification that hey, the time of like Lemuria is coming to an end, and you have the option to like the Atlanteans are coming to whether to invade or it's their time now. It's their moment to be the dominant civilization culture. And they had a choice to either preserve the Lemurian frequency in this kind of like pocket timeline or to go and experience the invasion of the Atlanteans and try to integrate or just to experience what that's like because what they said the interesting perspective was that the Lemurians are just love and light and connection and they don't they would be curious like what is war like what is it like for someone to be technologically advanced like if you were just a soul that only knew one thing would you want to go on the roller coaster just to see how terrifying it is. Like, there's an aspect of consciousness that just wants to explore and know. Doesn't mean they need to endure suffering. It just means that maybe they just are curious about what that potential of expression is because it's so out of their normal day to day. So this idea of like transitioning from Lemuria as the dominant culture and consciousness into Atlantean, which is different, more physical, has a different frequency to it, which was um I heard that at the start of Atlantis, it was designed as an experiment to see what's the highest a physical being can go on the earthly plane in the 3D reality. Can they go and move into a fifth dimensional or beyond state? And I think there were other galactic um, kind of guides and stewards that were helping to guide this process. And I think there was a part of Atlantis where humanity was on track to be a fifth dimensional, civilization. Some people think about the fall of Atlantis as something devastating, and obviously there were like crazy traumatic repercussions that can leave fragments uh, and I guess shatters in your soul memory. But when I map it to the Yuga cycle, it's like, well, if you're going from a golden age, Satya Yuga, and you're going down into Kali Yuga, which is the dark side, you can't force a golden age when it's descending in a descension like cycle. So if it's going down, like you might get pockets of it trying to rise, but the inevitable nature of a winter, like of that season, is that it's meant. to be a time to explore separation and war and, separation, like absence of love and connection. So I've heard that there was a time where Atlantis was amazing and like technologically balanced with the guidance of the Atlantean elders, which were spiritually connected. But then there started to be colonies that were more new and more rebellious and more about how can we just create our own resources and almost like separated themselves away from some of the original Atlantean ancient teachings, which were about unity, and then started to be more in their ego, more about individualistic gain. And this is why they were more tempted by black magic, by technological advances. And then there was this overthrow of the government and this co-opt, almost like a coup, which happened, which meant that a lot of that, like elder ancestral Atlantean wisdom, was, I guess, disrupted or distorted, and then a very different type of governance and hierarchy kind of started to take place. Um, what do you, what have you, yeah, what do you want to share about this? And maybe this is a good time to get some channeled information because I think that transition from Lemuria into Atlantis would be a very interesting thing to know about as, to mirror what we're going into on the upswing as an ascension into an Atlantean density, into maybe more of a Lemurian remembrance.
No, so far to this point, I haven't channeled about the fall of Lemuria. I don't know what happened to Lemuria. I've only seen glimpses of lifetimes being lived in Lemuria, and a single lifetime in Lemuria is like a speck in the ocean because of how long the whole age must have been. Could be millions of years in that golden frequency, I don't know, or hundreds of thousands, or several thousand, I don't know. But if you think about the precession cycle, each golden age, it's 26,000 year cycle from the photon belt into darkness and then back, or 24,000 years. But I have a feeling that Lemuria was when the continents themselves were like Pangea, like one thing here. So there could have been dinosaurs and things roaming the earth at that point, with this older race of humanity. So the continents have split and spread, and the amount of time that it must have taken for Lemuria to gain all the technological advances to be beyond where we are now to Atlantis could have been thousands of years. That's thousands of years of technological advancement. And they also had galactic disclosure. They probably had stargates. We had visitors here from other worlds. We had galactic, it's in the Egyptian hieroglyphics and things. And I think they were here before that, helping us to gain the technology of Atlantis, the power, the energy things, from crystal energy, and also they did a lot of like genetic manipulation and things. But to get to that point, to be able to manipulate the genes and to create humans with animal features or even galactic traits like in the embryo, and then the people would be born with animal ears or animal tails. They were like hybrid humans. People were experimenting with that stuff in Atlantis. But the amount of time, like I don't know how long it took, but it had to be
Can we,
a very long time to go from Lemuria.
would you be open to channeling just some, relevant information that would help us to, that's relevant to this part of the conversation?
Of course, yeah, because I mean, I'm really curious. I want to know what happened. At one point, I thought maybe Avalon was like the Iron Age between Lemuria and
Uh,
Atlantis, but I haven't channeled that. That's like, it made sense to me. I was like, because there's this huge span of time. Like, what's that? I
yeah.
was like, that's the magic of Avalon. But my wife channeled, that's not what happened. That Avalon was after Atlantis. And then the newer humans, the current humans, were just figuring out how to survive without the galactic rulers or our leaders. They all left Earth, and then humanity was left in a new world full of magic. And that's where fairy tales come from and stuff. So,
Okay.
but let me channel. Let me.
Should I ask,
Let's
so
see.
just so that you can be
Yep.
open and receptive, maybe I ask the direct question and then you can just get the answer, just so that we can stay focused?
Okay. Let me first try to connect because I need to
Yeah, sure.
figure out who to actually connect to who would know the history. Like if I connect straight to source or if there's a keeper. Like let me first ask, I'm gonna ask source who I should connect with. If it's them or a keeper of history somewhere. I'll just take a few deep breaths. Let me tune in.
Yep, no rush.
Who do I ask this question to? How do I get the true history of Earth, of humanity, and the previous versions of humanity that have been forgotten to time? There's a dragon keeper of wisdom. There's dragon keepers. Okay, let me see. Ancient dragons. Okay, I'm also seeing an image of a mantis for some reason. There's a like just a regular. There's a mantis energy. What is this? Okay, let me just get some clarity. Okay, interesting. For some reason, there's a mantis being, which is a galactic race, and they're showing up and saying they've been keeping track of, Earth from far away. They actually have records that they keep on Mars, which is like the true history of Earth is preserved on Mars, which is very random. I was not expecting that at all. But maybe this mantis being, whoever they are, can help us piece together, some of the forgotten parts of our history. So what happened between Lemuria and Atlantis? Lemuria was open to galactic contact. The Lemurian people were extremely highly evolved spiritually, and the planet was a paradise. And it was okay. I'm getting glimpses of other lifetimes I've had where I've came to Earth from Sirius as a dolphin being under the water. Like there's portals in the ocean, and there were highly intelligent like sea creatures that came to Earth because it was like a vacation world. So they'd come here because at the time Lemuria was the ultimate paradise. And different alien races, Andromedans, Syrians, and others, the Mantis, they would come here to experience the beauty. It was almost like a vacation spot, a galactic vacation spot. And the Lemurian people welcome these visitors as, guests. And everything was, it was all good. It was all pleasant exchanges. They were highly advanced civilizations visiting. It was a highly respectful thing where they had to respect the nature here. That was the rule. Um, and the Lemurians, the dream keepers, kind of were like the stewards of the land, and they made sure everything was good. And they did have powerful magic. They had authority, and the galactic visitors respected the Lemurians. So they're showing that the galactic visitors are going to be crucial to the rise of Atlantis. There's an exchange of technology, of wisdom, of cultures, gene splicing. There's all kinds of advances that happen over a period of time, but more rapid than it would have if, the Lemurians just had to figure everything out on their own. Because to figure out all the different computer chips and all that, it's like, no, these visitors came and gifted a lot of technology.
Mm.
And Earth, being the paradise that it was, had a lot of valuable resources that these other civilizations desired, including crystals and gold. Gold for the technology and crystals for the power, which ended up powering Atlantis. Atlantis used crystal energy. Um, And it's something that people have discovered now, but it's gotten swept under the rug. People have died. They don't want people to learn about the crystal energy again because everything's controlled by petrol right now. Humanity's being held back. But let's get back to Lemuria. I keep asking about reptilians because I want to know what reptilians were doing at all points because we want to know how they where they were and things, but maybe that's not important right now because I'm not getting any information about the reptilians. I said no, no, that's going to be a whole nother topic. Let's stay on just the race of humans and their
Yeah, agreed.
primary interactions were not reptilian based. They were Lyran and avian headed beings, like the two-legged human looking body, humanoid, but with animal heads. And the race of humanity in those times, like going into Atlantis when they got the technology to splice genes and things, they worked with the mantis beings, the Andromedans, the gray aliens visited, the tall whites. They were gene splicers, manipulators, and the humans seeing these galactic races wanted to almost imitate it, so they would have certain animal traits spliced into their genes, to their DNA, and then you get things like minotaurs, but a lot of times it was more subtle. Just animal ears was like a fashion statement, different colored eyes, cat eyes on a human body. It was a fashion statement. And they're showing me like I'm having glimpses now. I asked my wife a long time ago, I was like, why does this is going to be random, but it's really cool. Why does David Bowie look so familiar to me? Like, did I know him in a past life? And she channeled about David Bowie for me. And she said, you didn't personally know him, but he looks familiar because you've seen him in other lifetimes. He's always a celebrity, and you've seen
Yeah.
him in Avalon, where he was actually the Goblin King, like a legend. And that's funny because in Labyrinth, he plays the Goblin King. So I know from that, and he was in Atlantis as well. And he was a highly like a fashion icon, and he had like genetic manipulation things, a little bit bionic, like a cyborg type thing, but it was a fashion thing with the gene splicing and the technological advancements. But he was a performer, a singer, um, a celebrity of the age. And that's how like he looks so familiar to me now. I resonate so strongly. I've seen him in these other lifetimes, and he's always a star. But that kind of paints the picture of the fashion of Atlantis and how
Interesting.
like it's pretty cool stuff. Uh,
Let's talk about the fall. So, like, fall of Lemuria. What's that transition like?
they were immediately saying it wasn't like a big calamity. Like it was just slow temptation into Atlantis, where like because it was so high vibe, it didn't have to be like a big collapse like Atlantis, because the frequency of the Atlanteans was so much lower than the Lemurians. You know, a fall from way up high is like, okay, now we're down to Atlantis, and it was more gradual. And they're saying the dreamer aspect of their culture was lost over time, where they just existed in the dream and they forgot that it was a dream. It became real and they became enamored with the technology, with their day-to-day lives, with their fashion, with their image. So they less connection, more personal
Attachment,
uh,
identification.
power. Yes, but it wasn't as big of a like there was no flood or anything. They didn't all die out. The whole race just kind of slowly fell. And when they started splicing their own DNA and tampering with it, that also corrupted it over time because it wasn't its original blueprint, it wasn't its divine form anymore. It's been tampered with, and they were just influenced by these other races and given the opportunity. And the curiosity kind of took over. Like, what if we had some robotic powers? What if we had some cool animal, traits, different color eyes, and it just tainted the DNA over time, and also their mind lost that connection. And this is a long period of time that it happened over generations, thousands of years.
Okay, so the fascinating thing that I'm getting from this is that Lemuria by itself was this paradise, and then the Lemurians were connected to nature and Earth. And then because of galactic tourism, you've got other beings coming through and sharing technologies, and some of those technologies started to become new interests that they were starting to pursue, and that meant that the natural organic dream of Earth and Lemurians and nature and the elements started to uh, they started to play with some new toys. So whether it was chips, genetic mutations, and technologies, so it was kind of this trade. Is that true? Is kind of this trade that started to introduce, I wouldn't say bad, but introduce new novelties that got them more to the attached to the dream rather than remembering that, this is all a simulation or that they were connected to the dreamer, which was their initial role as guardians. Is that true? Is that basically correct?
That's what I was channeling. Yes, yeah. That gradually the curiosity of, that version of Lumeria, the normal people that were living in the natural world saw these people in ships with portals, with gates and things, stargates, and they're like, our magic is helping us grow trees, but I can't travel to the stars.
Yeah.
So of course they'd be interested in taking part of that. And it was a long period of time, but eventually they had so much technology and the crystal power for everything. Everything became easier. They didn't have to live off the land. Whereas before there was no money, there was no anything like that. There was
Mm,
just a community, everyone existing, fishing together, hunting, growing, farming. Um, but then that turned into people wanting a ship to fly around in, uh, status, music, technology, entertainment, things we're dealing with now. Yeah.
which is not okay, and I think it's important to frame this. It's not necessarily bad. It's not saying like we're going from heaven into hell. I feel like as part of any consciousness about curiosity, it's like if there's something technological, if there's something cultural, whether it's artistic, if it was fashion, for example, like that's still an expression that's interesting and worthy of experimentation and exploration, right? So you can't put any judgment on the Lemurians that wanted to try out these new trends or these new opportunities. Like it sounds like, you can't stay in one place forever. And I think it's almost like a nature to want to explore and experiment and to experience new things. So I just want to make sure that we're not judging any of this because, like, yeah, I don't think it's about keeping one thing the same at the same, like always. Like, if we're talking about evolution, and that's a really relatable thing to come in. For example, like AI is coming in, and it's like, how do people experiment with it? When the internet came in, that created so many new ways of expression and connection. So again, we can just see how something new can be potential to play and experience and create, really. And obviously, I guess now we're going into Atlantis. So there was an initial like experimentation phase, and then the fashion, the technology, the integration of that. I guess now we need to talk about where that got dark because I feel like where it gets parallel to now is genetic mutation. I've heard that vaccines were part of that control dynamic as well. Um, the over reliance of technology and how that disconnects from your own intuition, your own sovereignty, and your own disconnection with source. So you're welcome to add what you want as Brian the human, or you're welcome to channel what happened towards the latter stages of Atlantis. And then I think that's going to be a really interesting conversation to what parallels what's emerging now in terms of the rapid flux of technological advancements that we're seeing. How do you want to start this?
We want to talk about the darkness and the fall of Atlantis, how the darkness rose. So I think you've uncovered a lifetime of yours
Yeah.
working for a darker government, and I've uncovered one of my own as well in Atlantis, where I was a government employee, like a translator, a galactic translator, and I turned against the government, and I had to become a fugitive. I helped a genetic experiment escape because they were creating this weapon, this being. It was a she's actually my Akashic gatekeeper.
Mm,
She's shown up. She looks like a Lyran. She's a tall being, but like I didn't know how I was connected to her. And then one time she came through and showed me a lifetime where I rescued her in Atlantis, where she was an experiment, a genetic military killing machine. And I was working for the government as a galactic translator, and I decided to go on an adventure and help this being escape and bring it to freedom because I didn't think it was right. What they were doing was so wrong. They were almost like, like Lord of the Rings when they're torturing the orcs and making
mm,
them mean, and like
yep.
it's just crimes against humanity, a version of humanity. This being deserved better. So there was this darkness going on in the pursuit of power, a military type thing. I helped her escape. We escaped to Inner Earth. We had to go through all these adventures running from the government and stuff. It was this adventurous lifetime, but I was a translator. I wasn't a warrior in the life. She had to like kill a lot of people on the way. Like, I'm like, please don't kill me. And she's like this killing machine, like this military weapon. But I got her to Inner Earth and I like communicated and they took her in and I never saw her again. Then I had to like live in this technically advanced civilization as a farmer, like in the outskirts of middle of nowhere. I like grew corn or something. Like, and I was this high level military translator. It was a really funny lifetime where I was like, and now I'm like, I'm still afraid of cities. I don't like going in the city. I don't like the feel of it because I think that's the trauma from that lifetime. Like, I don't trust, I know there's darker things going on. Like, I feel safe, like hiding out in the woods or in the country, being close to nature. Um, but what was your past
Okay.
life experience? Because I feel like that'll paint a picture.
Yeah, I think I from to be honest, it would be actually awesome. Uh, would you be able to channel a relevant lifetime? Let's just say the most relevant lifetime for this conversation, because it might not be the one that I came across, that could help us to see a perspective of what went down uh, in relation to the transition between Atlantis going from high vibe and okay into more darkness, which brought about its demise. So yeah, could you call through a version of me from Atlantis that wants to step forward and just give us some whatever wants to come through?
Sure. Absolutely. This should be fun. Kevin's spirit team. Kevin's Akashic Gatekeeper. Please bring forward a lifetime relevant to the fall of Atlantis that'll help us piece together what actually happened. Thank you. Okay, I'm being shown it's a building in the city, high up in this building. You're there, you're on a council, and you're obsessed with power. You have a lot of power, and you're like at the pinnacle of gaining power. And this is something, it's not just you, there are other people making decisions. It's like an elite group of people with a lot of wealth, a lot of power, access to powerful technology. What is your goal? They're showing me like You know, in Star Wars, when they have the Death Star plans and they're hiding it and they're building something, and the people in the government are pretending to be one way, and then
Mm.
behind closed doors, they're the Sith Lords, like building all that stuff. They're showing me images of that because the energy of it is similar. You have a powerful, and this relates to something that my wife has channeled. There was a wizard, a powerful, true wizard in Atlantis who used the ultimate crystal technology. There's a crystal pyramid in the Bermuda Triangle, which is a powerful tool created by a wizard. It's under the ocean, and every once in a while it kicks on, and that's when ships and planes disappear. This is what actually destroyed Atlantis. And you have helped to fund the building of this and the design of it, and you trust this wizard who works with the government. I can't see anything about him right now. They don't want to show me the wizard or anything about him, just your role in it. Know that there was a powerful wizard who opened a portal. And I'm asking about Thoth, because I know Thoth was the Atlantean priest king, and he supposedly brought magic to Egypt, after the flood and things. I'm like, is he related to Thoth or Toth? No, no, he's almost a rival of Thoth, of Thoth. Where where Thoth has a temple, and there is a religion, there is magic still. There's magic and technology in Atlantis, and you usually only see the technology part of Atlantis, but there is powerful magic and disciples of Thoth that are sent out during the flood or as the flood's happening. I feel like Thoth goes into the earth or into the ocean and stays in his temple, and his energy is still there somewhere, lying, sleeping in the depths of Atlantis. But this crystal pyramid, you helped to fund it, to build it, and I don't know what its true intentions were. There's a stargate. It opens a gate. What does it open a gate to? I've seen it open a gate to another version of Earth, like in a parallel universe. And that's what Jenny channeled, that everything that passed through it dies on its way to Earth number 8 or something, where Earth number 7. So there's like multiple versions or timelines, and this connected two of them together. But what was the original purpose of this pyramid? I want to ask. Yeah. Okay, okay. Anunnaki related to it. You wanted access to travel to their world, to have their authority. Like there was something to do with the Anunnaki and their power. You were trying to gain it. Maybe it's a technology they had you were trying to replicate, and then you could have the power of the gods. There is something related to the Anunnaki who I haven't seen yet. But it was a catastrophe. Something went wrong. The Anunnaki knew, and it was almost a punishment of the Anunnaki to try to steal their technology, which I think goes along with the Bible. So there is something where they had a role in destroying everything when you tried to replicate their technology, their power. And it did more than just travel to their world. It was something about gaining their power, the source of their power, their designs, reverse engineering it, um, because they had come and there were interactions with the Anunnaki, but there were these supreme, powerful beings, gods. And part of the flood after, which is in the Bible, the God in the Bible is Enki or Enlil or both versions of him. They created the new humans, the current humanity, and they turned off our magic and they shortened our lifespan so that we wouldn't gain this power again. And we were servants at first, but that got interrupted later on. We won't get that far. But that was a lifetime of yours where you were on this board, this council, the creation of the crystal pyramid, the Anunnaki pyramid of power. that ultimately led to the destruction of Earth, like the wiping out of all the hybrids and everything. The Nephilim were probably just galactic beings mixed with humanity, the tainting of the DNA, but it was all altered after. And the wizards, the Magi in Avalon, which is after the fall of Atlantis, they are the remaining disciples of Thoth, I think, the teachers of magic. They held that the magical codes, but they didn't have their technology anymore. So they helped humanity to get back on the thing, although some of them turned to be like dark wizards or things or dark witches. But they were actually a different bloodline, a different race. They lived longer, they were taller, stronger than modern humans, are a lot smaller than our predecessors. So that's kind of some info on how it happened.
Okay. So just looking at that arc from Lemuria, it's like connection, heart-centered, nature connection, organic. And then there's the introduction of technologies, galactic trade, uh, and in some ways we can say more temptations into the material world and the digital and scientific and technological aspects of, you know, reality. And then some people that got really into that temptation and then wanted to use it for power and for greed. And I guess this is where that service to self energy starts to grow and breed as part of the Atlantean story, but also as part of the movement into Kali Yuga, which is more about movement into individualistic gain, power over government structures, top-down control. So you can see that there is this like momentum and rhythm and current moving towards those themes. And this is how it's mirrored through moving from Lemuria to Atlantis and then kind of present day. Um, okay, that's fascinating. And yeah, it that was similar to what I was told about the lifetime, like it's part of this like covert like agenda, which was about technology and about kind of yeah, trying to get more power. So okay, we're coming, we're almost at 2 hours now. So I think probably that's enough about Atlantis. Maybe we lighten the mood. Uh, I the one last bit that I wanted to say was that I did feel like it was important to talk about right now because in the same way we've got temptations of technology, te temptations of going more into the mind, getting more into transhumanism, getting more into like, technology integrated into biology. I think this is why it's so important to develop intuition, spiritual gifts, psychic awareness, like spiritual maturity, because the temptations of technology, of the mind, of what information and uh, what technology can do, if it's not guided from the heart, if it's guided through the mind, through the ego, it can easily slip back into service to self agendas and lose, like completely lose, like the reason or a purpose or a connection to nature and each other. So this is the foreshadowing, this is the warning of, you know, what happened in Atlantis. And I guess this is why the ascension path is, I don't know if it's a redemption of Atlantean lifetimes where there was that fall and that disconnection and that experience of that polarity. And now it's an opportunity to go the other way and say, okay, we've got an upswing towards the ascension cycle. We've got technology coming in, but how can we balance technological advancement using it as a tool, but then develop enough spiritually, remember enough spiritually so that we can grow alongside it without it, you know, like tempting us or uh, pulling us into some darker holes where we lose ourselves and we lose our connection to nature and each other and organic evolution and consciousness. Is there anything philosophical, profound, sweeping that you want to talk about that technology, consciousness, ascension, Atlantis before we move into the magic and lightness of Avalon, which we need, to be honest, after this?
Do you know the legend of the gray aliens, the Zeta Reticuli? Do you know like the story, the fall of the grays to be into the state that they're in? That is kind of like the darker timeline of technology where they genetically modified themselves because they feared their emotions. They were almost wiped out in war, like nuclear war. They almost were extinct because they blew each other up. They were a version of humanity, and it's a future timeline. And they were so afraid of repeating that mistake again that they genetically engineered themselves to remove emotion and highly just prized intellect in technology. And they've done it so much that they can't even reproduce. Like they need to clone themselves. They don't have that connection. They can't feel love. They don't feel connection to source. They have all the intelligence in the world, but they're empty. They're like neutral. They don't care one way or the other. They just care about intelligence. And that's kind of like a warning to humanity. And that's why they're here, actually. They've come back to this time in humanity's evolution to experiment to gain parts of our humanity to integrate back into them. And that's the future timeline of the SSani, the future integration of the higher perspective, the intelligence included with the emotionally mature humanity. It's like the merging of the two and the healing of their um, race and the evolution of our race.
Hmm.
So that's kind of like a future thing, but the warning, the legend of the Zeta Reticuli is like that's where we could head if we don't emotionally evolve and to like become masters of emotion because we could wipe ourselves out. But if you remove the emotion genetically and turn to just technology, that's not wholeness, that's an emptiness. And they've actually have to come back and fix it to save their species because they're going to die out if they can't start to regain some of the natural like reproduction stuff. The clones disintegrate or deteriorate with each iteration. Um, but yeah, that's just something I wanted to share as like a potential warning for humanity.
Beautiful, because the technological advancement, it's about optimization, it's about, how can we do things better, faster, engineering, science, technology, like it's so masculine, it's so yang. And I would say it's masculine in the sense that it's very much about like logic and like advancement, but at the expense of, yeah, emotional intelligence, connection, intuition, spiritual community. And this is why the divine feminine needs to come and rise. The masculine needs to come into balance because we've already been in balance with the patriarchy about systems of control. But now that control is translating into technology, control through science and through almost like giving away your sovereignty and your power to technology so that it can do and make life more convenient for you. And then that removes your role as the creator. So I think this is why, yes, the emotions are important, that mastery is important, inner work's important, but at the same time, the psychic abilities, the intuition, the ability to download the information for yourself because you have access and because you have faculties that are either dormant or that haven't been exercised that need strengthening. And this is part of coming online as the new human, as the more evolved, advanced, expanded human, because we're using all of our faculties, which will be way more superior than any technology can because the organic technology, that's already embedded within us, in our DNA, within our energy chakra systems. Like when we get that fully operational, technology won't be able to do what we can do in terms of using the imagination, our creativity. There's so much magic and intuition that we can draw from source that technology can only replicate. So technology then can become a tool, but the source, the life force, the chi, prana, all of that, like there's a magic and there's a radiance and there's a light and there's a brilliance, there's an intelligence to that that's unmatched to technology. So we need to grow that as a civilization, as a humanity, so that we can all tap into that we all feel empowered to tap into that. And then technology can support us to be galactic, go cosmic, and be multidimensional, because we also need that to move out of being the slave race, exchanging time for money and all the industrialization that we went through. So technology definitely has a benefit. Um, okay. Uh, Avalon.
I do want to say, I know we're going over on time, that
Well, how do you?
when you're talking about we all have these powers to connect to source and things, I know it's something everyone can do, but it's like learning. It's like, how can you be a musician? How can I learn how to play an instrument? It takes time and practice and training, but it's something that, like, yeah, you could play guitar if you wanted to. And people are like, I could never play guitar. How could I do that? It's like time and practice. Like, get a teacher, tell someone to teach you how to do it. Anyone can learn it, but you have to be devoted and committed. It's like any hobby that you're learning, but it's something anyone can do. So I just wanted to say that quick because a lot of people would be like, I could never do that. It's like, you can. How bad do you want it? If you want it, you can do it. Find a teacher. My wife is a teacher. She taught me. She teaches a lot of powerful channelers. Um, JennyRebecca.co. She's running her course soon. I'm going to plug for it because I've done it and it works. It's amazing. Um, yeah,
I
but
wonder
now
if
we're going to
I
do,
I actually wonder
go
if
for it.
that's the close. I think Lemuria and Atlantis was the theme of this podcast, and maybe we can jump on for a separate one about Avalon. That'd be fun as well, just so that we can focus on that. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, Avalon deserves its whole own podcast.
Yeah,
Like all these millions of episodes. I'm
perfect.
joking.
Part two. Let's
I'm
do
joking.
let's do the sequel to this one, and this was just the precursor. So, after 2 hours, that's the end of Transcendence Talk episode 2. Thank you, Brian, for joining us to bring through new information about Atlantis, Lemuria, and also talk about your perspectives about this transition. Yeah, I think it's always great to chat to you. Hope people found it interesting. And is there a final message that you want to give people about maybe a bright future? Something to look forward to, maybe some kind of wisdom or guidance that you can share with people.
Just there's light and dark in everything. And if you're surrounded by darkness, if you all you see is darkness on the news, everywhere you look, you're feeling low, remember that sometimes in the darkness, when you can't see the light, it's because you are supposed to be the light. Like you're supposed to be the light shining, like that's why you're in the dark spot. So just be open to that, and you can actually be a bringer of light in this world. You're needed. So shine your light.
Beautiful, lovely sentiment to finish on. All right. I'll add some details about how to work with Brian. I think he's got a membership reopening soon. He does one-on-one sessions if you're curious about your past lifetimes, or if you just want channeled information. Like sometimes I go to him just for like guidance and get direct from the source. Um, and yeah, stay tuned for the sequel of this where we'll dive deeper into Avalon and all the magic and mystery and wonder that that realm has. All right. Thanks for joining. We'll speak to you
Thanks for
soon. We'll see
having
you
me.
guys soon. All right. Thanks,
Okay,
Brian.
see you soon.
Peace. Bye.